Gold has hit a new all-time high, and it is now above $2,700 an ounce. This is huge news because not only is this a new nominal all-time high for gold, but it is approaching its inflation-adjusted all-time high as well. But when it comes to silver, what in the world is going on? Buy your gold and silver online from SD Bullion. New customers get gold or silver at spot by visiting sdbullion.com/new. Thank you so much for watching. I do sincerely appreciate it. Here we are looking at the 1-year chart for gold, and as you can see, gold has been climbing steadily. It is now sitting at $2,702 an ounce, moving up $24 today. So gold is charging higher and higher. At the start of the year, gold was under $2,000 an ounce. So it's gone up about $800 in just 1 year. This is a massive move. But when we look at silver, we see a different picture. Silver is currently sitting at $31.80 an ounce. It's about 50 cents off of its 11-year high. So silver is doing very well right now. If we look at the start of the year, silver was at $22 an ounce. So it's moved up about $9 itself. So both metals are doing very well, but when we compare them to their inflation-adjusted all-time high, it is a completely different picture. Okay, so here we are over at macrotrends.net, and you can see I have selected inflation-adjusted. So this is the price of gold going back, I think, like 100 years or so. And if we zoom into today, you can see this is pretty updated. It's sitting at 2,693. So it's very close to what's going on with gold right now. But if we back up to the 80s, this is the 1980s, you can see the inflation adjusted all-time high was in January. Gold hit $2,747 an ounce. So we're about $50 off of the inflation-adjusted all-time high for gold, which is absolute insanity when you think about it. I mean, the dollar has been going down, and yes, gold had that big spike up in the 80s, but we are now nearing a point where gold is actually in uncharted waters, in a place it's never ever been before. But let's take a look at silver. All right, so here is the inflation adjusted chart for silver, and it looks much different than the gold chart, although we do have that big spike up in the early 80s. We have that big spike up in 2011. If we zoom into right now, you can see this chart is up to date with what's going on with silver right now. But let's go to the 80s. This is the inflation adjusted all-time high for silver. You can see it hit $144.89 an ounce. That's right, silver was well over $100 an ounce if you adjust for inflation back in January of 1980. So silver is way off of its inflation-adjusted all-time high, and gold is within spitting distance of its inflation-adjusted all-time high. So what's going on right now? Well, the first thing to understand is why silver price went so high in the early 1980s to begin with. If you don't know the story of the Hunt brothers, I'll just give you the bullet points here. So the myth that a few billionaire brothers from Texas cornered and drove the price of silver to come $50 an ounce in 1980 still exists to this very day. Estimates are some 12 billion ounces of silver existed above ground in 1980. At their peak of buying, the Hunt brothers controlled about 250 million ounces of combined silver bullion, 100 million ounces, and silver futures contracts representing some 150 million ounces. This total represented about 2% of then world's physical silver supply. So basically, there were a few billionaire brothers who bought a bunch of silver and the price went super high. They go on to write, most modern financial journalists often fail to mention that while the prices of silver and gold were hitting record highs on Friday, January 18, 1980, the COMEX sprung out the following Monday with drastic rule changes to liquidation orders only for silver futures. This action essentially meant silver futures traders could no longer go long on silver or bet that silver's price was going higher, these unprecedented actions helped lead to the eventual collapse in silver futures prices. And when silver futures prices went down, obviously the spot price of silver went down as well. So the COMEX definitely changed the rules of the game. They made it to where you could no longer buy any more silver futures. You could only sell them, liquidation orders only, and this forced the price of silver down. So could it have gone higher than it was? Absolutely. So not only was gold at an all-time high, but there was also a lot of hype surrounding silver back in the early 1980s, and this is what caused silver to go to that inflation-adjusted all-time high of $144 an ounce. The difference between then and now is that, yes, gold is also at an all-time high, but there is not a lot of hype around silver. Silver is just chugging along, keeping up with inflation, not doing anything crazy because no one is talking about silver. The mainstream media isn't even bringing up silver in the regular news cycle. They are talking about gold, they're talking about silver very little. So if things change and we see people piling into precious metals and we do see a lot of hype building around silver in the future, I think the price can go a lot higher than it is right now. I recently saw a chart that I thought was super interesting. This chart is the U.S. consumers' inflation expectations for the next 5 to 10 years. It literally skyrocketed just this month to 7.1%. This is the highest it has been in over 40 years. So this is the general public and what they think about inflation and where it's headed in the next half a decade to a decade. So it has actually also doubled in just several months. I mean, look at this. Basically, people think that there's going to be crazy inflation moving forward, and they're very worried about it. So it's possible we could see a lot of people pile into precious metals in the near future. Take a look at the US M2 money supply. So it actually hit 21.17 trillion in August, the highest level since January of 2023. And this also marks the 5th consecutive monthly increase for the U.S. money supply. Now, over the last 10 months, the amount of U.S. dollars in circulation has jumped by a massive 484 billion. And guess what? The Fed just started cutting rates, and we're already seeing the money supply increase. So these people that are worried about inflation, it definitely seems warranted. Now, is the Fed going to continue to lower rates? Well, if we look at the target rate probabilities for the upcoming Fed meeting on November 7th, you can see that CME Group is predicting about a 9% chance that rates remain the same and a 91% chance that rates will continue to come down, albeit only a 25 basis point rate cut. But the more that they lower rates, this is going to cause more inflation. This is going to weaken the dollar and possibly push gold and silver much higher from where they are right now. So does silver have a bright future ahead of itself? Well, I certainly think that it does. Again, comparing it to that inflation-adjusted all-time high, it's at less than 25% of where it should be compared to gold. Gold is within $50 of its inflation-adjusted all-time high. Once again, it is over $2,700 an ounce now, and it is not showing any signs of slowing down. So I think if you wanted to buy gold or silver right now, both are a great option, but I obviously prefer silver over gold simply because I think it is much more undervalued as compared to where gold is at right now. And another thing that shows that is the gold-silver ratio. The gold-silver ratio is at 85 to 1. This essentially means that it costs 85 ounces of silver to buy an ounce of gold. That's what the ratio is. How many ounces of silver to 1 ounce of gold with the prices where they're at right now. Now, this ratio is usually lower than it is. In fact, it's usually at about 60 to 1. You could see this is the, I think, 30-year chart So 60 to 1 is a more normal level. It is on the higher side right now. So this is just another tool that is saying to me that silver is undervalued and a better buy. So if you want to buy precious metals, I certainly think silver is the better buy of the two. But either way, I think you'll be doing fine because I think the dollar is going to get weaker. And when the dollar is going down, you don't want to be holding dollars. You want to be holding something that is outside of that system. That's why buying gold and silver is a great way to protect your wealth. All right, there you have it. That's your update on precious metals right now. Let me know what you think about everything going on down below in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next one. Silver Dragons out.